Since some of my earlier comments were focused on some of the Reformation and pre-Reformation ideas and thinkers, as we put a bow on Area 3, allow me to share a few thoughts about the expansion of the Catholic Church during these years that we've been looking at. For starters, remember that these are pre-Enlightenment times that we're examining. The values and thoughts of the 1500s and 1600s are significantly different than how people will think in another 200 years or even today. Exploring new geographical areas carried with it the implicit idea of conquest. This was not a nice time of dialoguing, agreeing to disagree, and treating those different from you with great respect. Western Europeans, whether from Spain or Portugal or England or Holland, believed that they had the superior culture and religion, and subjugating a new territory by force in order to dictate cultural and religious changes was considered good and God-honoring. If we use the Spanish as the main example from this time period, we should note that it was common Spanish practice for the church to have representation on every explorer's ship that set sail for the new lands. When Columbus and Cortez and others discovered new lands, discovered to them and not to the inhabitants who had been living there for 1,000 years, when they discovered these new lands, they claimed the land for the Spanish crown, because any inhabitants didn't have any rights in their view, while the priests on board simultaneously anticipated adding these Indians into the church. People groups and tribes who resisted the Spanish advance were often obliterated. Those who surrendered were often enslaved, their land exploited, and conversions and baptisms were mandated. Not all priests and missionaries were of the exploitive variety, however. Bartholomew de las Casas, about whom we read, was a priest who initially exploited the New World inhabitants, but later became an advocate for the rights of the native populations. He encouraged the Spanish crown and the church to act justly toward the indigenous tribes. Kindness and respecting the full humanity of all people was encouraged over violence and exploitation. While some changes were implemented during the time of Las Casas, his voice was a minority against those who encouraged domination and subjugation. Another telling example of the spirit that Las Casas had can be seen in a movie from the 1980s. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's a movie that's called The Mission. Jeremy Irons, Robert De Niro, star in the movie about a Catholic priest working in the South American jungle in the 1600s, and how his peaceful strategy of winning and loving the indigenous people is challenged by the Spanish authorities, who want to destroy the people so that they can control the resources of the land. No spoiler alert necessary. I'm not going to give away the end of the movie, but if you haven't seen it, if you have the opportunity to see it, I mean, it is made in the 1980s, so in terms of filmmaking and some things, it's a little bit dated, but the movie overall is certainly worth seeing. I give it 2 thumbs up. In conclusion, all of this raises for me a few questions that I think are worth pondering. In ministry, how do we think about the other? Do we see all people as marvelously created in the image of God, designed for relationship with the Lord of the universe? Or do we see people as projects, or a number, or a notch in our church growth belt? Do we see all people equally, Or are some people more equal than others? If we are honest with ourselves, do we look down on certain people because of economics, or lack of education, or life choices? It's easy to see the flaws in the Spanish model in the 1600s. Less easy to see ways in which we might be acting similarly in the 21st century.